Something else that I really wanted to talk to you about was in your TEDx talk, you talked about people come to Oxford and they fall apart, and that actually you put yourself back together when you arrived in Oxford. But in your kind of experience, what is it that, because I know other people who've been to Oxford and they suffer quite high anxiety, and it's a very high pressured, high expectation, high levels of success, academic environment. So what is happening within that culture, apart from the obvious, that is really creating that, and then does that go on to then become culture in future organisations that these people go on to work for? So actually we're talking about leadership in organisations, but actually within academia and education, it's starting there, right? These cultures are starting, and maybe it's even a heightened culture in a place like Oxford. So.
Yeah, it's definitely an incubator for toxic leadership styles. I think what I found, and it goes back to this loss aversion, that I think Oxford has worked out. If you make people work out of this self-hate, work out of this belief, if they quantify their ego by, I got a first, I'm a number, but I'm a good number. And it's all about, if we give students this idea that they will only be worthy, they'll only be enough if they get this random number, which actually has no reflection of intrinsic value at all, but it's just bred that way within us. And these people are the people who get into Oxford tend to be incredibly ambitious, very perfectionistic, but normally have very low self-worth. They are driving themselves not out of passion for a subject, but kind of to approval, either of their parents or this invisible they, this belief that everyone's judging them and what they do is somehow more important, and it has to be better than everyone else. It's that mentality, which is, it's the chip on the shoulder that really accelerates success, but ultimately also accelerates self-destruction, I think. And at Oxford, what I found was, because I took the risk, and I said, no, I disagree. I think if I actually work less hard, then I'm going to be improving my resilience, but most importantly, looking after my mind, so my mind can, take this information and play with it and argue effectively, and come up with new ideas. And I was really what I wanted to kind of reiterate was the whole point of education is it's a total privilege, and it's a joy. It should be. And this is an environment that can be incredibly nurturing, but unfortunately the faculty want you to regurgitate what they've taught you, more or less, and they honestly want you to drive yourself out of a very self-flagellatory approach, rather than working for the joy of work, and pursuing your passions. It's about, I have to do this so I can get there, and then I'll be okay, then I'll be worth it, then I'll be happy, then I'll be enough. And I think that does follow through, but regrettably it actually means people do less well because they're just so burnt out. So the amount of 2-1s at Oxford is very impressive, but the amount of firsts is actually not too impressive, and that's because people have lost what it is to be an academic, and it's to inspire and create, make it new, Ezra Pound. Instead, we're just regurgitating because we're scared of being different, and that comes into to work, your working style of just bashing your head against a brick wall sometimes, this boxer from Animal Farm, I must work harder, and really thinking that output and success is determined by effort, when actually it kind of, the curve goes like that eventually once you push yourself off the cliff and burn out entirely, your output is nothing. So that is dangerous, and I do actually really like companies like Netflix, who they're quite good at basically saying, you work to your own timetable, and we reward innovation. We don't just reward you doing your numbers. It's not that Taylorist Amazon style of these ridiculous lists which are longer than you could ever achieve just to keep you scared. I think that's the point. Oxford nurtures this idea of working out of fear and not out of love and commitment to your potential. So I got lucky, because I think I burnt out very early and was like, wait, this is a lie. I'm not going to succeed if I don't like myself. I'm not going to succeed if I am exhausted and terrified all the time of not being enough. I'm just, you know what? Forget it. I'm just going to play. And as soon as I had that kind of openness to exploration and creativity, I just loved my subject again. And then I became a free thinker and a free speaker, and hopefully, I'm kind of like in flux right now, but hopefully I bring that to my whatever organisation I do represent. But yeah, I'm deeply saddened to see a lot of my friends kind of come out the other side of Oxford and then go, oh God, who am I? What am I doing? Like completely identityless, and just thinking, all right, I'll go to a logo job because then I matter. It's kind of like we're making ourselves prime beef and we just want more and more stamps to make us A grade. But ultimately, when we're alone at night, we don't really know who we are or have a sense of what we even like anymore. And that's really scary.
I was reading an article this morning about sort of the surprising traits of good leaders, and there were two words that I would really like to hear your kind of own personal definition of, and one of them is success. So how do you measure or see your own success, or what does success mean to you? And then the other one is confidence, because I've had a few conversations with people lately who have a strong dislike for this word confidence because they associate it with arrogance or thinking that they're better than other people, and that makes me sad because we should all feel confident in ourselves. So I just, really interested to see what your own personal sort of experiences and definitions of those two words were.
Well, neither of those concepts are zero sum, and unfortunately they're portrayed that way in media. That the famous quote is, there's only true success if someone else fails, like I'm paraphrasing, but it's that idea that we succeed and we are confident by overcoming or frankly suppressing someone else. And I've always found my confidence and my success amongst and not against others. I'm really firm on that. And but these concepts for me have both changed a lot as I've grown. And actually it's been, for both of those things, actually been through how my concept, nicely for this podcast, how the concept of leadership has changed for me. So I kind of bought into that paradigm growing up, as most kind of ambitious kids do, that success is something you achieve, you get out of achieving or securing your dreams or buying that thing, ultimately it's about money, or it's about prestige or influence or what have you. It's these transcendent concepts which normally can be quantified through pound notes. So I thought that my happiness would come from me just kind of, again, being really belligerent and stubborn and self-striving and self-serving. And I would secure both my confidence and happiness and success through the same thing, which is kind of material goods or possessions, or frankly having others respect me. I felt that my self-worth was reflected. So, God, I sound like such an awful kid, but I think a lot of people are still like this, and they're like this till they're dying that day. And that's the saddest thing, because the economic concept of diminishing return is really important in something like satisfaction, because we'll buy something, and the more we buy, the less it actually has value to us, and we're never actually satiated or satisfied by anything that we buy. The way that success and happiness comes about is actually within the pursuit itself. It's not the pursuit of happiness. Happiness is the pursuit, or should be. So I now derive success from, and I hate using this Americanized word, but it's self-actualization. It's nothing makes me happier, nothing makes me feel more successful than when I'm using the skills that I have and the skills that make me feel authentic to myself on a platform where I can make a difference, and ultimately using the experience that I have to, in some way, hopefully diminish the suffering of others. But also, like, success for me is learning something new. Success is, I would say it's so immaterial now, whereas before it was so very material. And confidence, it's so important, you're right, that we stop conflating confidence with assertiveness. Because assertiveness does not qualify expertise. Unfortunately, it's a heuristic for us in the boardroom now. The loudest voice in the room is the authoritative one. And that has to change, because that fundamentally means that we're making suboptimal decisions. If we're listening to the loudest person in the room, ordinarily the loudest person in the room is brash, hasn't really thought it through, and is just wanting to get ideas out there, which is a very male thing, because women don't really have the opportunity to spitball ideas in the same way, because we're often trodden down in kind of platforms like that. So it's really important that we start diversifying what confidence is. Because quiet confidence is, I think, for me, the most powerful form of confidence. The person who doesn't need anyone's opinion, doesn't need any good, doesn't define themselves through anything other than being on their journey, being on their path, and being authentically and confidently themselves. So yeah, that's how I view it now, but it's taken a long time to get there. And it's fun. I'm lucky in that, yes, I've had a lot of brushes with kind of mental illness, depression, anxiety, but coming through that, it showed me, I think, where happiness is derived from, and the fact that this is all a false paradigm, and the point of diminishing return means what we really want we'll never get through this paradigm, through sex, shopping, drugs, alcohol. These things, these dopaminergic activities of choice, are just shortcuts to what we really want, but actually they're detours, because what we're really looking for is connection, purpose, and satisfaction, and those things can't be bought or used. They have to be found.
And so I suppose maybe one final question then is kind of what is your vision of a new type of leadership, or the leadership that you aspire to continue bringing to your work and to the people that you work with, and some of the values of and qualities of that leadership?
I'm really excited by the concept of coordination, and I like that leadership is coordinating role, not just the first one who sticks their head above the parapet, or the person on the platform, or the person who's spouting hateful speech. Leadership to me is an organizational role, it's a managerial role, it's actually quite a bureaucratic role, but ultimately it's empowering others to be the best version of themselves. And it's leadership has to understand that if you bring ego to decision making, you are going to make subpar decisions, because we as humans have cognitive biases that we just can't really overcome until we have a delightful singularity which can do that for us, but unfortunately we don't yet. So I think what I would hope for leadership tomorrow is to understand that we need to change our goals, because a leader, can't lead unless there's a destination, right? So we need to change our destination, and that needs to be sustainability, that needs to be a satiation-based politics rather than a satiation-based economy rather than a growth-based economy. And it needs to be about meeting the greatest challenges we have ahead, without being afraid of change. And as I say, valuing the work of each individual component, because also the system's made up of people, right? So it's valuing each individual component and understanding how each individual component is as important in coordination as the coordinator.
Thank you.
No worries.
So what's your message then? What's your message to the typical CEO today? What would you like him or her to think about to help them open up to this vision that you've got?
Remember who your boss is. Even if you're the CEO, remember who your boss is. And no, it's not your shareholders. It's actually your consumer. Or if you're a politician, it's your constituent. Ultimately, you are going to have... I'm a huge believer in a trickle-up economy, where if you invest in your workforce, first and foremost, you're going to get an incredible return out of it, much more so than if you think, if I just aggregate wealth, it'll trickle down eventually. That's nonsense. But it's so important that CEOs remember that when they reflect the population around them, and that's by diversifying leadership teams, that's by diversifying the workforce. So it's also about diversifying your products. We can look at pro-social examples of huge commercial success. That can be Rihanna's Fenty and Savage lines, which have marketed to everyone, all skin tones, all body types. And that has been a runaway money spinner, because these companies are now reflecting everyone and not just peddling this image of what people should be buying into. They're actually listening to their consumer And by listening to your consumer's going to want to buy from you. If they feel respected and wanted within the decision process, and they're not just being unilaterally told what they should want, then wow, then you've got a real moneymaker. So for me, CEOs, I think, need to understand that their real boss is their buyer, and it's not just them calling the shots, because they're only going to last as long as their profit does, frankly. And that may be a very cynical and pragmatic approach to it, but I think it's important that CEOs realize that they aren't always the smartest guys in the room, and they can be incredibly out of date, and they need to be listening as much as they are talking, and that's either from their consumer or from the lower levels of their organization. If you make decision making bi-directional, it's going to be positive decision making. If you make it unilateral, you're going to make mistakes.